America, with just 4.25% of the world's population, has over 70% of the world's serial killers.
The reaction of the people in Wichita was panic. Everybody was scared. Everybody looked at their neighbors, locked their doors, locked their windows, checked their phone lines. It caused quite a stir.
The second shift duty sergeant would always send the officers out, reminding them the BTK strangler is out there. He hides in women's bedroom closets. He's armed with a knife and a gun. Be careful.
Serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and Gary Ridgway have haunted our nightmares for years. Their terrible crimes are in headlines, movies, and documentaries. But why do so many of these killers come from America? What is happening in this country to create so many monsters? See this video as a wake call for you, my friend, because today, we're going to discover the scary hidden truth behind the American culture, media, and society to find out why this country has so many serial killers. You might found this video very disturbing for many of you guys, but I promised if you stayed with me, then by the end of the video, you will get a proper insight and understand everything very clearly. Now let's begin. Everyone wants to succeed in their life, but my friend, welcome to America. In the United States, the pressure to succeed, to achieve, and to be someone is immense. From a very young age, Americans are taught to chase their dreams and make a name for themselves. Now, this pursuit of personal success can lead to remarkable achievements. It can also create an environment where failure is not an option, and the stress of not measuring up can be overwhelming. Now, imagine someone who already feels like an outsider, someone whose mind operates on principles drastically different from those of normal individuals. When I first arrived in the US, each day felt like a fight to feel good about myself. I struggled to prove I mattered. When I asked for help, people ignored me or were mean. This made me feel alone and angry. For some people, this feeling leads to violence. The American media is a big part of this story. It makes killers famous, turning them into well-known names. The media doesn't just tell us about these killers. It often makes them seem more exciting, giving them nicknames and creating a strange interest in their crimes. For someone looking for attention, this can be very tempting. They can hurt and kill for pleasure, and also become famous in a twisted way. Let's consider the environment in which these individuals are raised. In the US, alcohol and drug use are pervasive. Drinking is tied to social life, celebrations, and even coping mechanisms. But what happens when this drinking becomes more than just social? When someone becomes addicted, it changes their brain and makes them more likely to act violently. It's not just alcohol. Many drugs given by doctors can also cause addiction. This makes many people dependent and mentally unstable. America's views on sex and violence are also important. The US has long seen sex as impure or sinful, but at the same time, it has a huge pornography industry, and sex is used to sell many things. This mixed message can confuse people, especially those already likely to behave badly. Violence is also a mixed message in American culture. Murder is seen as a terrible crime, but violence is also praised in the name of patriotism and heroism. The US has the world's strongest military and often uses it to show power. This makes violence both condemned and celebrated, sending confusing messages about when it is acceptable. But what about history? Why were there so many serial killers between the 1970s and 1990s? During this time, America was facing big problems. There were money troubles, political fights, and social changes. These tough conditions, along with other factors, led to many serial murders. Let's look closer at one very controversial topic: how the American media helps create and keep the problem of serial killers. The American media doesn't just watch the horrors committed by serial killers. It helps create their stories. The media's constant and often sensational coverage plays a big role in making the public fascinated and in making killers want fame. When a serial killer is caught, the media goes into overdrive. News outlets race to give the most shocking coverage, often turning these killers into dark celebrities. Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy. These names are well known not just for their crimes, but because of the media frenzy around them. Serial killers are often given shocking nicknames that make them seem even scarier. The Milwaukee Cannibal, the Lady Killer, the the Green River Killer. These names add mystery and horror, capturing the public's imagination. This kind of coverage doesn't just inform. It entertains and horrifies, turning human suffering into a spectacle. For the serial killer, media coverage gives a twisted kind of approval. Many killers want attention and recognition, and the media gives them plenty of it. By making their horrible acts into big news, the media boosts the killer's ego and meets their need for attention. This hunger for fame can even push them to do more crimes, looking for more notoriety. Take the Zodiac Killer, for example. He taunted the police and newspapers with secret messages and codes, enjoying the attention and the game with the authorities. The media's huge coverage of these messages only made the Zodiac Killer want more infamy. The media's portrayal of serial killers deeply affects the public's mind. By highlighting the most gruesome details and creating a sense of constant danger, the media creates fear and paranoia. People start to see serial killers not as rare monsters, but as an everyday threat, hiding around every corner. This intense fear changes how people act. Parents become more protective, communities grow more suspicious, and people become more wary of strangers. The way the media shows serial killers contributes to a culture of fear, making extraordinary horrors seem like everyday dangers. The ethical implications of the media's role in covering serial killers are significant. Journalists and media outlets face a delicate balancing act between reporting the news and sensationalizing it. The quest for ratings and readership often leads to a disregard for the potential consequences of their coverage. By turning serial killers into anti-heroes, the media risks glamorizing their actions and inspiring others to seek similar notoriety. The line between informing the public and exploiting tragedy for profit becomes dangerously blurred. The American obsession with fame and success also plays into this dynamic. In a society where being known, no matter for what, is often seen as a measure of success, the media's glorification of serial killers taps into a deep cultural vein. The idea that one can become a household name, even through horrific acts, reflects a broader cultural pathology. Let's explore the contradictions that make America a breeding ground for serial killers in more detail. In America, violence is both condemned and glorified. On one hand, murder is seen as the ultimate crime, punishable by death in some states. On the other, violence is celebrated in the context of patriotism and heroism. The military, law enforcement, and even Hollywood action heroes are revered for their use of violence to achieve their goals. This duality creates a confusing landscape where the lines between acceptable and unacceptable violence are blurred. For individuals predisposed to violent behavior, this can serve as a justification for their actions. They see themselves as part of a larger narrative where violence is not just tolerated but revered. America's relationship with sex is equally contradictory. The country was founded on conservative, puritanical values that view sex as something dirty and sinful. Yet, America also has one of the largest pornography industries in the world, and sex is used to sell everything from hamburgers to cars. For individuals with twisted views on sexuality, this paradox can be deeply confusing. They grow up in a culture that simultaneously condemns and commodifies sex, leading to feelings of guilt, shame, and frustration. These emotions can fuel a desire to exert power and control through sexual violence. The story of America's serial killers is not just about the individuals who commit these heinous acts, but about the society that shapes them. It's about a culture that prizes individual success, often at the expense of communal well-being. It's about a media landscape that rewards violence with fame. It's about a nation with a complicated relationship with sex and violence. And it's about a society that struggles to recognize and address addiction and mental illness. To prevent future atrocities, we must confront these uncomfortable truths. We need to understand the cultural and societal factors that contribute to this phenomenon. Only then can we begin to create a safer, more compassionate society. As we conclude this chilling exploration, ask yourself, what kind of society do we want to live in? How can we balance the pursuit of individual success with the need for community and support? And most importantly, how can we ensure that we don't continue to create the conditions that breed monsters? Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark heart of America. Stay safe, stay aware, and let's work together to build a better future.